YouTube, TikTok, the news. It doesn't matter where you look, for the past couple of years, you haven't been able to escape the headlines about Japan having houses for sale for a single dollar. This has caused a tsunami of influencers heading to Japan to start their new lives as homeowners in the Japanese countryside.
Okay, so far I don't see what's bad about
the big question with this Japanese $1 house mania is that what actually happened to all those people who bought their houses? Are there really, essentially, free houses somewhere?
Of course, it's not going to be fully essentially free houses, but there's definitely going to be easier than to get it. For example, here in the Netherlands now, like the median house is about 400k. It's not cheap, and people's salaries are median, what, 40k? Max? It's not that much more. Like 30? Are you going to be able to get a house for cheap, renovate it for maybe, let's say, 100,000, and then have a place that you can live? Yes. Are you going to be able to get a job there to get a visa? That's a completely different case. Are you going to be able to make your own company and hire a Japanese person? Yes, you can. That's what I think what PewDiePie did. So I'm really excited to see his points, but so far I'm not following.
We're out there, and is it possible for you to join these influencers and also move to Japan? So let's dive deeper into these mysteries and find out if something that sounds too good to be true could actually
But it's not
be
too
true.
good to be true. It's they're trashed houses.
The idea of escaping everything and moving into the Japanese countryside for a new
look at the
life
bees.
sounds
cute.
like something you could have previously only dreamt of. But now, thanks to social media, the dream is slowly starting to seem like something anyone could do. With every influencer under the sun telling people how easy it is to just get a free house in Japan and start a new life, it's no wonder this trend has attracted attention abroad, where housing markets have become a nightmare.
I've been looking into Akias myself, and from what I understand, there's a lot of building regulations and earthquake problems with them, because the older houses have a lot of not as earthquake safe, and a lot of the houses have a larger chance of falling during a larger quake. However, you can be going into the mountains where there's much less earthquakes, and I don't think it will be as big an issue. But
with trusting influencers is though that they often skip the fine print, and it is no different this time with the people who try to get you to also buy an empty house, also known as an Akiya, in Japan. So before you start packing up and searching for your own free house, you need to keep in mind that the influencers selling this fantasy aren't just doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. Since there's more to it. While there's nothing inherently wrong with selling a dream, it's vital to understand that the version of the Akiya lifestyle you see online isn't the whole story.
Okay, so I'm wondering,
so what's the real story behind this Akiya?
Here?
And more importantly, if there are actually millions of free houses in Japan.
But most Akiyas aren't actually free, first and foremost. If you go on any Akiya website, they're like 30k, 40k, 50k. There's some free ones, but they're always going to be like a terrible broken down shed in the middle of nowhere. But it's also the same with the Italy one, and I think Spain had this as well. The €1 in like Sardinia or whatever island it was. And it's such a good deal if you are going to a place to settle down and live there for like 5-6 years, but you're also handy and capable. And it's not such a good deal if you have no idea what you're doing, because you either A, have to learn and spend loads of time on it, spend loads of money on repairs and I guess skill and knowledge, and C, you'd have to live there for a certain amount of time and make it a livable house. Yes, you can sell it afterwards, but what's the resale value in a place with 5,000 people?
What's stopping someone from taking all of them to themselves? Let's start with the basics. What exactly are Akiya?
Abandoned
As mentioned
houses.
before, they are empty houses scattered across the country, particularly in rural areas.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about a few abandoned properties here and there, since 15% of all houses in Japan are Akiyas, which...
And that is simply, from what I understand, because of 3 reasons. 1, old and decrepit. 2, people can't afford to take care of them anymore. And 3, you have to move into cities to be able to have some career.
Means we're talking about a staggering number of over 10 million empty houses. The main reasons why so many houses are left abandoned can be put into 4 categories: aging population,
Yep.
urban migration,
Yep.
cultural preferences,
That one I
and
didn't
tax
say.
laws.
Oh, tax laws.
Japan has one of the oldest populations in the world, and many of the elders still live in the countryside. As the older generations pass away, many of their homes stay where they are. Most Japanese youth move into
Yep.
the bigger cities in search of better job opportunities.
But more like job opportunities at all. And still they work themselves half to death. So I'm not sure. Maybe they should have just stayed on the farm and had a better life.
And once their elder family members pass away, the younger generation usually has little interest in maintaining these properties in the countryside. The reason people in Japan generally aren't interested in moving to these abandoned houses is because Japanese homebuyers tend to prefer new builds. Unlike in many Western countries, where old houses often have historic or sentimental value,
Yeah.
a home's value in Japan depreciates over time.
Massively depreciates. And it's a very interesting thing because if you go to any mansion and stuff in the UK or here in the Netherlands or anything, they can be upwards of 1 million, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 million. And they are, in my opinion, old decrepit houses. But they're valued so high because of all their cultural significance and maybe their size, of course, and estate and these things. But they are old houses with not as nice. I don't think it's as nice, honestly, personally.
Meaning older homes are often viewed as liabilities rather than assets.
Yeah.
Japanese property tax laws also play a role in this Akiya situation. If the house is demolished, the land becomes subject to higher property taxes. To avoid these costs, most people leave the houses standing, even if they have no intention of ever maintaining or using them. With these houses being abandoned, they are essentially free, and the influencers online have started selling the idea of Japan having free houses for anyone to take, which to many people abroad sounds like the opportunity of a lifetime. But what are these houses actually like? And why would the Japanese government even consider giving them away or selling them for next to nothing, especially to foreigners?
That was actually my question. Why especially to foreigners? It's probably because it's going to cost a lot to fix them, and it's probably because nobody wants to live there, so they want to populate these areas, but nobody wants to go there, so the next best thing they have are the gaijin.
To understand that, we have to look at the motivations behind giving away a free house and the realities that come with moving into them. It's easy to see why the trend became viral.
Yeah.
There's no denying the charm that influencers bring to the idea of buying an Akiya. Watching a montage of them easily renovating the house and then chilling on their porch is enough
Which
to
is
make
highly
even
unlikely.
a nerd
That is
like
gonna be
me
easy.
start fantasizing about life in the countryside. But here's the thing. It's essential to remember that their job is to make things look enticing. Selling the Akiya dream isn't just about sharing their experiences, it's about keeping their viewers engaged, growing an audience, and in the end, it's about making money. For them, a viral video about turning a $1 house into a cozy, livable home turns into ad revenue, sponsorship, and brand deals.
This
For
is true.
normal people, the reality behind actually turning a $1 house into something livable, well, that's a little less glamorous. The truth
Isn't this what you have to do in every single house that's decrepit to fix it? I'm not quite sure why it's a problem. I still don't see the problems. I understand some of the trials and tribulations. Maybe people don't go into it with an understanding of the trials and tribulations, but I'm saying there's nothing out of the norm so far.
is, while an Akiya can be bought for next to nothing, these homes often come with a litany of problems and challenges.
Yes, of
and
course.
we're not talking about just a couple of extra
No,
fees here
structural
and there.
issues.
It goes much deeper, and sometimes there are obstacles you could have never even imagined. Even if you manage to buy an Akiya for an incredibly low price, or even get one for free, there are immediate financial responsibilities
Okay, this
that
is what I
come
wanna
into
know.
play, like registration and license tax, real estate acquisition tax, and gift tax. And these are just the start. But let's say you're prepared for all of that. You've budgeted enough money to handle the taxes and you're
Yep.
ready to make your dream a reality. Well, immediately afterwards, there comes another problem. Japanese houses historically aren't made to last. So
That's what
most
I
of the
thought.
time
This
they
is the
require
normal one I was
significant
thinking.
renovations, especially considering many of them might have been abandoned for decades. Most of these abandoned houses aren't what they seem to be on the outside. Even if they look fine, you can never fully know what you are actually buying. As an example, this Australian woman bought herself an Akia, which seemed to be fine on the outside, and she
what
was
structural
assured
issues was
there
it?
was structurally nothing wrong with the house, so she decided to sign the papers without doing an inspection with the registry.
But this is a problem of somebody that didn't do an inspection. I understand what he's getting at now. I get it more and more because it's like people aren't doing their due diligence. Like, you gotta get an inspection. That's just how it is. You gotta get an inspection. Whatever you're doing, get an inspection. Oh, you want to buy a house? Get an inspection. You want to buy an Akia? Get an inspection. If you buy a €1 house thinking that, okay, all of these things need to be fixed, but you have an idea of what needs to be fixed. Okay, that's perfect. Let's say now you have to pay 100,000 to fix the house. But if the roof is structurally unsound and you have to fix the whole thing, and then you have structural beams that aren't working, let's say now it costs you 150k. That 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 or however much you're spending on an inspection is going to be well worth it.
Builder, because after all, she was on a budget. However, after she tried turning the water on, she realized there was problem with the pipes. A problem that required ripping out the bathroom and putting a whole new bathroom in. But this was also just the beginning of her problems when it came to her new house. And in her own words, this initially cheap house turned into a nightmare scenario for her. When you buy an abandoned house in a foreign country, it's impossible to tell how much time, effort and money you'll end up having to put into making the house something you can live in. This is another reason why most Japanese themselves prefer to tear down the old house and simply build a new house.
So what you're saying really is, don't buy a house, buy the house, tear it down, build a new one. Ding!
On its place, because most of the time the price will end up being the same. But it's not all about the money, since that's the least of your problems when buying an Akia. There are actually far bigger obstacles you have to face after moving into your new house. The Japanese government isn't going to just give out free apartments to foreigners. The whole point of giving out these houses is to vitalize the dying countryside, which means
That's
most
what I
of
said.
the time you are actually required to live in the house. And let me tell you,
But that's not weird. That's most of the fine prints of all these cheaper houses because they want to repopulate. And that's what I said. Like, this isn't something that you should be shocked at. You're buying a house for cheap. It's probably going to come with some caveats.
it isn't a short time. After you sign the paperwork
Probably
to
3
your
or
new
5 years.
house, you might have to live there for up to 20 years.
Oh,
And
that's
not
a bit
all of
worse.
it. Many towns even require you to take part in the community service on top of that.
That's bullshit.
The image that
Screw
the
that.
Akia influencers might be selling you is an image of free life in the countryside. But the truth is that most of the time it's more like the Japanese government wants to imprison foreigners, force them to renovate the houses and take part in community service since the local Japanese are too old to take care of the rural areas themselves.
Yeah, that to me is I think my biggest concern. The fact that I'd be forced to take care. Not that I won't, but if you force me to, I won't. I'm like, hell no. Like, what's it in for me? I'm already fixing the house. I'm already repopulating the dying countryside, and now you're telling me that I have to do certain things. Don't get me wrong. I'd probably be learning Japanese and trying to speak with the elderly population and like getting a rapport. But there's a big difference between getting a rapport and being told you have to do something because you're a gaijin, foreigner.
Countryside in Japan, while beautiful, comes with its own set of challenges.
Oh yeah.
It's one
Loads of
thing to
mountains.
spend a peaceful weekend there away from the city, but it's another to live there alone as the lonely foreigner for 20 years. There is a reason why the local people are moving away from these areas. Essential services like hospitals, schools, and supermarkets may be miles away. On top of this, rural communities often consist of mostly elderly residents, and while this might seem charming at first, it can be difficult to socialize as the only young person in town, especially when you're a foreigner.
From what I've understood, the countryside is much more positive to foreigners, especially if they're trying to speak Japanese. And maybe I'm wrong here because I haven't been there. And when I go, listen, when this channel gets big enough, I will go to Japan and I will interview people in the countryside, okay? That's how we're going to make this, okay? We're going to make maybe live and we're definitely going to do YouTube. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have to do it in Korea too.
In these areas, the local people have known each other their entire lives.
This is true. It's hard to get into a clique.
People are often polite and welcoming. Becoming an accepted member of the community isn't automatic. Living as a foreigner in Japan, even living in Tokyo, where people are more used to foreigners and there are also other foreigners living there, can be hard. So, it might be mentally impossible for most people to be able to live in these rural areas for a longer time. When it comes to the influencers themselves, many of them come with unique circumstances that help them navigate these challenges.
For example, a very good knowledge of the countryside, maybe a girlfriend or family, maybe their half. There's all sorts of things that can give them a massive advantage and a leg up.
Most of them have local connections,
Yep.
speak fluent Japanese,
Yep.
or have already spent significant time in Japan, which is why they often have an easier transition to life in countryside than the average newcomer moving from abroad. Those people who have decided to move to a $1 Japanese house solely from online content, to them, the reality of actually living there might be gruesome.
Might be. Again, it's also kind of speculative. Maybe you're moving there not to actually integrate in the Japanese community, but to have a place to stay and to have, maybe you're working from home. Maybe you want to live in a little bit of a rural area. Maybe Japan is the place for you. And you go there and you fix, let's say you already understand how things are to be fixed, etc., etc. So they fix the house and it's all nice and beautiful. And they don't actually want to integrate in the same way as maybe this guy is talking about. It's still not a bad deal per se. Maybe it's not the best. Maybe you should have gone to a place where you could have more. I think connections are really important. Do I think it's alpha omega? For a person like me, I think it is. But for everybody, no. So people are going to have different reasons for moving there.
But even after all of this, if there is someone out there willing to sign the paperwork to live in the countryside alone for 20 years and willing to spend tens of
But the 20 years
thousands
is
of
ridiculous.
dollars in renovating the house, even if they're willing to do all of this, there is still one significant barrier that could stop them from doing all
Living
of
there?
this. And it's something most people don't even think about
Visa?
until it's too late. So let's say you've paid your taxes, renovated the house, and got used to living in the countryside. You might be thinking, this is it, I've done it. But after a while in Japan, you're going to face your ultimate hurdle, one that most people don't even consider, your visa status.
Easy.
Buying an
See, the fact that people don't consider that, I think is a testament to how little people actually have traveled. Because anytime you go outside of a certain region, you're going to have a visa, you're going to have an allowance or whatever you're doing. So, for example, when I went to Brazil, I had to have a very small, like a small visa, like a short-term stay visa. And when I went to America, I had to do an electronic visa. But if you've never done that, it's very, very, very easy to get stuck on an actual visa problem. Because let's say now me and you're traveling, and I'm a seasoned traveler, and I'm like, okay, I know it's going to be tiring at the 7th or 8th hour, therefore I packed extra food. And the other person has no idea, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so tired, I'm so hungry. It's just experience, right? However, a visa to live in the country. It's just, I think it's such a fundamental, rudimentary thing that if you are clever enough to be able to accomplish a purchase in Japan for a $1 house, you should definitely have the capability to check up what the legalities of staying there is.
IKEA and living in rural Japan might seem like a straightforward plan. But the thing is, unlike in some countries where investing in property can grant you a long-term visa, in Japan the visa laws are pretty strict, and property ownership in Japan does not grant you visa. Most foreigners in Japan have limited duration visas. Visas in here typically last only a few years and come with specific conditions. Owning an Akiya won't change that. Unless you have a permanent residency, you'll need to renew your visa regularly, and there's no guarantee that your application will be approved. While some towns running these Akiya schemes are desperate for new residents, they still have to operate within national laws. They might encourage people to move in, but they can't help you navigate visa renewals or guarantee your right to stay. Imagine investing time, money and effort into making an Akiya your home and living there for years, and then having something happen that makes you unable to renew your visa.
This is probably the number one problem that I've seen this whole video that I think it's scary. Like, genuinely. Because you go into getting a trashed building, okay, now go and do your due diligence, check it out. You go to a place where there's a bunch of older people and you might not be accepted into community. Okay, I get it. It's a bit difficult. But this and the fact that you have to be there for 20 years and a lot of places expect you to join in. That's like mandatory. That's ridiculous. But being thrown out after having made your Akiya home, that's even worse. That's even worse.
And all that effort is gone. The romanticized version of Akiya ownership taps into powerful desire. The desire to escape and start fresh.
And own
and while
something.
Influencers are fantastic at showcasing that dream, remember that they are just some people doing YouTube. And the whole point of their channel is to make their life look good. While getting an Akiya for free is technically possible, the path to making one into your home is filled with challenges.
True.
There are real success stories out there, people who have faced these challenges and made it work. But the thing is, those stories come from individuals who knew what they were getting into.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. You have to know what you're doing.
Accordingly, and were also a bit lucky. It's good to remember that not everything we see online is as simple as it seems. Japan is a fantastic country and many people dream of living in here, but we also have to remember that the grass is always greener on the other side. So my personal advice before signing a 20-year-old prison sentence to the countryside would be to come and check the country beforehand.
Yeah, I don't like that they called it a 20-year-old prison sentence. It's not like you're bound there by a solitary confinement. You can go to cities and you can decide what Akiya and what region Akiya you want as well. I think that if you know what you're doing and you've been there and you have a little bit of connections in Japan, maybe, could be a good idea.
Learn the language, learn the culture, and if you still feel like buying an Akiya, go for it. It's not impossible, just a bit harder than the internet makes it seem. See you next time.
Very nice video. I quite enjoy this guy, actually. I gotta remember to like his videos.